It started as a simple story. A small town, a kind man, a chance to write about goodness, but kindness is the easiest mask to wear. His name was Edward Wayne Edwards. Everyone called him Ed. The man who helped kids, fixed cars, told jokes, and never raised his voice. When I met him, I thought I was meeting a hero. When I left that town, I wasn't sure if I'd ever met a human being at all, because behind every fire he lit to warm the lost, there was something burning that never went out. This is the story of how I found him, and how I almost became his next chapter. It started with an email, a simple one, the kind you forget as soon as you read it. Subject: small town hero worth meeting. The body of the message said only, "His name's Edward Edwards. He runs a youth program near Akron. Might be a good piece for your column about people who still care. At the time I was 23, hungry for stories that meant something. I wanted hope, something clean, something pure, something that could prove that goodness hadn't died out of this country. So I packed a camera, my notebook, and drove 3 hours south into the soft belly of Ohio. The road was empty except for the smell of rain and gasoline. Every mile the city faded behind me, replaced by pale cornfields and quiet hollow houses. By the time I reached the town of Maple River, it was dusk. There were Christmas lights still hanging in June, old barns painted with American flags, and that slow kind of silence only small towns can hold, heavy. Patient, suspicious, Edward lived on the edge of town, in a low white house with a sagging porch and a rusted mailbox that said simply, Edie and Minnie. I knocked twice before he opened the door. He was older than I expected, late 50s, maybe early 60s. Broad shoulders, a belly that spoke of beer and time, a wide grin that reached all the way up to his eyes. He wore a blue work shirt with grease stains and the kind of calm that made you trust him instantly. When he spoke, his voice was warm, almost rehearsed. "You must be the writer. Come on in, buddy. Coffee's fresh." His wife, Minnie, was small and quiet. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. The house smelled of burnt wood and motor oil. The living room walls were covered with framed photographs. Teenagers with bright faces, campfires, church groups, football teams. Every one of them signed the same thing. "Thank you, Ed." I remember thinking, he really did save these kids. That night we sat by the fire pit behind his house. A few local teenagers were there, laughing, passing marshmallows on sticks. Ed told stories, funny ones mostly, about the time he fixed a car engine with a shoelace, or how he once convinced a state trooper he was a volunteer firefighter. They all listened like he was a preacher, and a comedian rolled into one. When the kids left, he turned to me and said quietly, "You know, I used to be a bad man." "Really?" "Oh yeah, I was in prison once, robbery. That was a lifetime ago." "People can change, son. That's what this whole thing's about. Second chances." He smiled, and the firelight flickered across his face. For a moment I thought I saw something behind that smile. Not guilt, not pride, but a kind of quiet hunger. Then he looked away, and the moment was gone. The next morning I followed him to the local garage where he volunteered. He spent hours fixing cars for free, letting teenagers learn beside him. He called them my boys. He joked, teased, taught them how to tighten bolts, how to be men. They adored him. One of them, a tall boy named Tommy, told me, "Mr. Ed saved me, man." I was headed nowhere. "Now I got a job, I'm clean, I'm getting my GED. It sounded genuine. Everything about Ed did. By noon I was convinced I'd found my story, a redemption piece. The kind that makes people believe the world still has decent souls left. I took a few photos. Ed smiling with his boys, wiping his hands on a rag, that big American flag waving behind them. Perfect headline material. But when I went back inside the house to grab a pen, I noticed something. In the corner of the kitchen, there was an old bulletin board, papers tacked over papers, and beneath a curling photo of a youth camp, I saw a newspaper clipping, yellowed and torn. Headline, "Local couple murdered, bodies found near Montana Highway, 1980. I froze. There was a handwritten note beside it in red ink. "Remember the fire." Before I could look closer, Ed's voice came from behind me. "Need another coffee, buddy?" I turned. He was smiling again, same warm face, same calm eyes. I nodded. "Sure, thanks." That night I couldn't stop thinking about that note. Remember the fire. The second evening I sat in Ed's living room, while he flipped through old photo albums for me. Each page was a collage of smiles. Kids around campfires, church retreats, group hugs. But as I turned the pages, something subtle felt wrong. The faces of the kids seemed repeated. Same boy, different background. Same girl, different year. When I asked, he just chuckled. Yeah, some of them come back every summer. Guess I made an impression. I asked if I could take a few pictures for my article. He agreed easily. While he was outside, I snapped a few shots of the photos on his wall, just for context. Later that night, scrolling through the images on my camera, I realized something else. In almost every photo, Ed was standing at the edge of the frame. Not smiling, just watching, always watching. The next day, I stopped by the sheriff's office for background. Sheriff Daniels, a broad, sunburned man with hands like shovels, leaned back in his chair when I mentioned Ed's name. Oh, old Eddie, huh? He's a local celebrity. Been here, what, 10 years now? Keeps kids out of trouble. Why, he giving you a hard time? No, not at all, I said. He's great. I just wondered if there's any record of his program, funding, past projects, that sort of thing. Well, Daniels scratched his chin. Not much paperwork on that. He kinda just does his thing. Came here after his wife's folks passed. Good man, bit strange sometimes. Keeps to himself. Then he lowered his voice. If you're writing about him, just don't dig too deep. Some people don't like their past written down. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. I thanked him and left, pretending not to feel the chill crawling up my spine. That night I walked past Ed's house again. It was late, around midnight. The fire pit still burned, small and steady, and Ed was there alone, staring into the flames. He wasn't moving. Just staring. His hands were clasped like he was praying. Then he reached down, picked up a cardboard box and tossed it into the fire. Flames flared high, sparks twisting into the night. I couldn't see what was inside, but something small, maybe photographs, curled and turned to ash. He stood there a long time, then whispered something I couldn't catch. Finally, he looked up, straight toward me. For a second, I thought he smiled. I stepped back, heart pounding, hiding behind the mailbox. When I looked again, he was gone. Only the fire remained, crackling softly, feeding on the dark. The next morning, I decided to wrap up my visit. I told myself I was being paranoid, that not every old man with secrets is a monster. I packed my notes, said goodbye to Minnie, who didn't meet my eyes, and shook Ed's hand one last time. You'll send me the article when it's done, he asked. Of course. Make sure they spell my name right. He grinned again, that wide grin. People always forget the second Edwards. I laughed politely, got in my car and drove away. But 10 miles down the road, I pulled over. Something was eating at me. Something small, like a splinter in the mind. I opened my notebook to double-check a few quotes. Between 2 pages, I found a folded photograph I hadn't taken. It was slipped inside my notes, maybe by accident. A Polaroid. In it, Ed was standing beside a teenage boy. The boy looked uneasy, almost afraid. Behind them, a fire burned in a metal barrel. On the back of the photo, written in red marker, he was saved. I drove back to town that same night, but Ed's house was dark. No fire, no laughter, no lights. Just the quiet hum of cicadas and the faint smell of smoke in the air. I knocked on the door. No answer. I walked around to the backyard, and the fire pit was cold, filled with grey ash. Something shiny glinted in the center. I bent down and pulled it out. A small metal tag scorched around the edges. Dog tag style. The name barely visible, Tommy. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car outside the gas station, staring at the Polaroid in my hands, and listening to the sound of my own heartbeat. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that there were 100 explanations. But deep down I already knew. The man I had come to write about, the man everyone called the Saint, wasn't saving anyone, he was collecting them. I didn't go back to Akron, not right away. For 3 days I sat in my apartment, staring at the photograph. The boy beside Ed, the fire behind them. The words scrawled across the back, he was saved. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, a misunderstanding, a relic of the past. But something inside me kept whispering, then where is he now? Tommy, the kid from the garage, the one who said Ed saved his life. No one had seen him since that night. By the 4th morning I was back on the highway, driving south toward Maple River again. The air was heavy with summer heat. the kind that clings to your skin like sweat and guilt. Every mile I drove, I told myself this was stupid, that I was chasing ghosts. But that Polaroid on the passenger seat wouldn't let me forget. When I arrived, the town looked smaller, the colors duller. Maybe it was just me, or maybe something had shifted, like the whole place was holding its breath. Ed's house was quiet. Curtains drawn. The mailbox still said Edie and Minnie. I knocked once, twice, no answer. Then I heard it, and a faint scraping from the backyard. I followed the sound and found Minnie, kneeling beside the fire pit, cleaning the ashes with a small metal rake. When she saw me, she froze. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I just came to talk," I told her. "Where's Ed?" "Gone to Columbus. He said he had work." Her hands were trembling. She didn't look up. "When's he coming back?" "He didn't say." I crouched down beside her. The ashes were still warm. There was something about the smell. Sharp, chemical, like burnt plastic. "Mrs. Edwards," I said quietly, "do you know a boy named Tommy?" For a moment she froze completely. Then she stood up and turned toward the house. "I don't know anyone by that name." And she shut the door behind her. That night, I booked a room at the Maple River Motel. It was the kind of place where the carpet never dries and the air conditioner hums like a dying animal. I opened my notebook, spread out the photos, and started connecting dates. June 12th, the night I first visited. June 13th, Tommy disappears. June 14th, Ed burns something in his backyard. It wasn't proof, but it was enough. I needed more. The next morning I went to the sheriff's office again. Sheriff Daniels wasn't there, just a deputy named Hayes, barely out of high school. He recognized me immediately. "You're that reporter, right? Writing about Ed?" "Trying to," I said. "Do you have any reports on missing persons?" "Teenagers?" He hesitated, glanced around. "We don't get many of those here." "What about recently?" "Recently?" He frowned. "Well, there was that kid, Tommy Greer. His mom filed something last week, but Ed said the boy ran off to Cincinnati for a job." "Guess that checks out." I felt my pulse in my throat. "Did anyone verify that?" "No reason to. Ed vouched for him." That evening I parked my car across from Ed's house. The sun dipped low, the sky bruised purple. At exactly 9 o'clock, a light flicked on in the backyard. He was back. Ed stood by the fire pit again, same as before, calm, deliberate. He poured something from a gas can, then lit a match. Flames roared up, swallowing the night. He leaned over the fire, muttering something. I couldn't hear the words. Then he lifted his head, eyes reflecting the flames like twin mirrors, and smiled. I raised my camera, took a photo. The flash broke the darkness for just a second, and his head snapped toward me. "Who's there?" I ducked behind the car, heart pounding. After a long silence, I heard the screen door slam. Then footsteps on the gravel coming closer. I crawled along the side of the car, crouched low. The footsteps stopped. Then his voice, calm, casual. "You shouldn't spy on people, buddy. Ain't polite." I didn't breathe, didn't move. He waited a moment longer, then chuckled. "Don't worry. Everyone gets curious. You'll understand someday." The footsteps retreated. The fire hissed. And I realized I was shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. The next morning I decided to talk to Tommy's mother. Her name was Carol Greer. She lived in a small trailer park near the highway. The moment she opened the door, I could see she hadn't slept in days. "You're from the newspaper?" "Yes, ma'am." "I'm following up on your son. Have you found him?" I told her the truth, that I didn't know, but I'd spoken to Ed. Her face hardened. "That man's a liar." She pointed to a photograph on the wall. Tommy, smiling in a graduation gown. He told me Tommy left on his own. "But he didn't even take his clothes." "Not a thing." She looked me straight in the eye. "That man's done something. I can feel it. I went to the sheriff, but they just said Ed's a saint." Said I was confused. Her hands were shaking. "But I know. A mother knows." I promised her I'd find out the truth. When I left, she pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. "He gave this to Tommy last week. Said it was for a job interview. It was a business card, cheap paper, smeared ink. On it, EW Foundation helping youth find purpose. No address. Just a phone number. That night I called it. It rang once, twice, then a click. "Yeah?" The voice was unmistakable. Warm, slow, friendly. "Ed. Hi, this is—" "Oh, I know who you are, buddy." He laughed softly. "You've been busy." asking questions, visiting people who don't need visiting. Where's Tommy? I asked. Silence. Then, Tommy's fine. He's learning. You'll meet him again someday. Click, the line went dead. I didn't sleep. Every sound outside my motel window made me flinch. The hum of cars, the creak of pipes, the whisper of wind. I wanted to leave, but something stronger kept me there. Call it guilt, call it instinct. I couldn't walk away. The next day I bought a small tape recorder and parked outside Ed's house again. At noon he came out with two of the other boys. They were loading something into his truck, a large black plastic bag. I started recording. "Where you taking that, Ed?" one boy asked. "Just some old junk. Don't worry about it." They laughed like it was nothing. Then he looked across the yard and straight at me. He raised his hand, waved, smiled. That same perfect smile. And in that moment I realized he knew. He'd known from the start. That night I drove out past the town limits, following the dirt road that curved behind the fields. The moon was bright enough to paint everything silver. After a few miles I saw it, the faint orange glow of another fire. Ed's truck was parked nearby. No one else around. I killed the engine, stepped out quietly and walked closer. He was standing by the flames again, but alone, calm, humming softly. Beside him the ground looked freshly disturbed, and next to that the same black plastic bag. My breath caught in my throat, then my foot hit a branch. It snapped, loud as a gunshot. Ed turned, his face flickering orange. "Buddy," he said, "you shouldn't be here." I took a step back. "Where is he, Ed?" He smiled. "You're asking the wrong question." "Then what's the right one? Why do you care?" The firelight danced in his eyes. "You think you're different from me. You're not. You just write about what people do." "I do it." I froze. He stepped closer, holding something in his hand, a small silver lighter. "You came here to write about a good man, so write this down. Sometimes saving someone means burning away what's left." He flicked the lighter open. For a second I thought he'd throw it. Instead he smiled again and dropped it into the fire. "See you soon, buddy." Then he walked past me, calm as ever, got into his truck and drove away into the dark. I didn't chase him. I couldn't. I just stood there staring at the flames until they died down. When I finally looked at the ground beside the bag, I saw something half buried in the dirt. A shoe. Size too small for any grown man. I turned off my recorder and sat in the car until dawn. The tape was still spinning, whispering nothing. In the morning I went back to the sheriff's office with everything. The photo, the tape, the card, the tag. Daniels listened, sighed, leaned back. "Son, you need to stop this. Ed's a respected man. He's helped this town more than you ever will." "There's a boy missing," I said. "Boys go missing all the time. They run away, they die, they come back. You city people always think there's a story." He handed me back the tape. "Go home," I did. But I didn't stop. That night I sent every photo, every file, every recording to a friend in Cleveland PD. And then I waited. 2 weeks later, I got a call. My friend's voice was low, urgent. "You were right. There's something off. We found records. Ed's fingerprints from an old robbery case in Wisconsin. And get this, his name shows up in 3 other homicide investigations. All closed. All cold." He paused. "You need to be careful. If he knows you're digging..." But the line crackled and the call dropped. I looked out my window. Across the street, under the pale light of a street lamp, a car idled quietly. I couldn't see the driver, but I didn't have to. I already knew whose smile was waiting in the dark. When you spend enough time chasing monsters, you start to hear your own heartbeat differently. Feel it slower, heavier, like it's trying to warn you before your mind catches up. For 2 weeks after that night by the fire, I lived with that heartbeat. It followed me into sleep, into every half-dream where the smell of gasoline returned, and the flicker of orange light danced behind my eyelids. I told myself to stop, to let it go. But truth has a way of scratching at the door until you open it. So I went back. It was late July when I returned to Maple River. The air felt heavier than before, thick with humidity and something else. Something like waiting. Ed's house looked the same, but the front yard was overgrown now, the porch light off. The curtains still drawn. Minnie answered the door. She looked thinner, paler. Her eyes darted behind me as if someone might be listening. "You again," she whispered. "I just need to ask a few more questions," I said. "I told you before, I don't know anything. "Minnie, where is Ed?" She didn't answer, but her lips trembled, the way people's lips do when they want to scream but know it's useless. Then she stepped aside. 5 minutes. No more. Inside, the house smelled the same, of gasoline and damp wood. The photos were still there on the wall, but some were gone, leaving faint rectangular shadows in the dust. "He said he was going to Kentucky," she murmured, wringing her hands. "Said he had to finish something. When was that?" 3 days ago." Her eyes flicked toward the hallway where a small door stood half open. I followed her gaze. "What's in there?" "Storage." "Don't." Her voice cracked on the word, but she didn't stop me when I walked over. The door led down a short flight of steps, narrow, wooden, creaking under each step. A pull-chain light hung from the ceiling, trembling in the draught. I tugged it once. The bulb flickered to life. The basement was small, unfinished concrete, old boxes, a workbench covered in tools. At first I thought that was it. But then I saw the wall. The far side of the basement looked wrong. The concrete was newer, smoother, a lighter color than the rest. And near the corner, a single line of bricks didn't quite match. I ran my hand along it. The wall sounded hollow. Behind me, Minnie whispered, "Please stop." "What's behind here, Minnie?" "Just old junk." Junk doesn't smell like that. Because now I could smell it, faint but sharp, gasoline and something else. Sweet, rotting. There was a hammer on the bench. I picked it up, swung once, twice. The bricks cracked, dust falling in grey clouds. Minnie started crying. "He said not to go down there again," she sobbed. "He said it was better if no one ever looked." I hit the wall again. The hole widened, revealing darkness behind it, and a faint metallic glint. I reached inside. My fingers touched something cold and smooth. A box. I pulled it out and set it on the bench. It was an old military-style locker, dented, scorched at the corners, a single word carved into the metal. Saved. When I opened it, the first thing I saw was the photos. Dozens of them stacked in neat bundles tied with string. Each bundle labeled by year, 1977, 1980, 1984, 1997. Every face young, every smile the same. Some of them I recognized. The same boys from his wool, the ones who had come back every summer. Others were strangers. Underneath the photos were newspaper clippings, articles about fires, disappearances, tragic accidents. Every one of them circled in red, and at the very bottom of the box, a cassette tape. Handwritten label, "They were lost." I found them, I didn't play it there. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard. I stuffed the tape into my pocket, grabbed my camera, and started snapping photos of everything. The box, the wall, the room, the labels. Minnie stood in the corner, crying quietly. "He said they were bad kids," she whispered. "He said they needed saving. He told me not to ask." "How long has this been going on?" "Since before I met him," her voice cracked. "He said God told him to do it." I stopped. The hammer still hung from my hand, covered in dust. "Told him what, Minnie?" She looked at me with hollow eyes. "To burn the sin out." I left the house at dawn, heart pounding so loud I could barely think. Every mile back to town felt longer than the last. At the motel, I locked the door, closed the curtains, and finally played the tape. The sound was faint, distorted, old cassette quality, warped by time. At first just static. Then a man's voice adds, "Sometimes they ask to be saved. Sometimes they don't. They scream, but the fire makes it quiet. Fire don't lie. Fire tells the truth. They said I was a criminal, a sinner, but I'm a shepherd. I find the lost." I stopped the tape, staring at the recorder. The silence after his voice felt alive, like it was still breathing in the room with me. I sent everything to my contact in Cleveland PD. Photos, recordings, scans of the clippings. Then I waited. That night my phone rang. It was him. "Jesus, man," he said. "Where did you find this stuff?" "In his basement. You don't get it. This guy, we've got cold cases from Wisconsin, Montana, Indiana, all unsolved. Every single one with the same pattern. Fire, teens, missing bodies. You think it's him?" "I don't think." "I know, Ed Edwards. He used to be on the FBI's Most Wanted back in the 60s. Escaped prison, faked his own death twice." My stomach dropped. "He's still out there." "Then you need to get out of there." The line crackled. "So you're not safe." Then silence. I packed immediately. Notebook, photos, tape. By the time I stepped outside, dawn had begun to grey the sky. That's when I saw it. A note under my windshield wiper. Folded, soaked with dew, I opened it. 3 words written in red. "Stop digging, buddy." I drove straight to Cleveland. Every car behind me felt like a shadow. Every mile sign looked like a countdown. At a gas station off I-71, I pulled over to use the phone. While I was dialing, something caught my eye in the reflection of the window. A figure across the road. Tall, blue shirt, watching. I turned fast. But he was gone. I hung up, jumped back into the car, drove another 20 miles before I dared to breathe again. In Cleveland, my friend, Detective Rowe, met me at a diner. He looked older, exhausted. He dropped a folder on the table. "You didn't hear this from me," he said. Inside were photocopies, mugshots, reports, fingerprints. All the same man, Edward Wayne Edwards. Aliases: Ed Riley, John Sloan, Ed Wainwright. Convictions: robbery, fraud, homicide. Released on parole 1967. Disappeared from records 1979. He's been using fake IDs ever since, Rowe said. He was even in Montana during the 1980 highway murders. The handwriting on those notes you sent, it's a match. I sat there staring at the pages. The same face smiling up from a mugshot, only younger. Slick hair, cold eyes. The same smile I'd seen a dozen times beside a fire. "What happens now?" I asked. "We build a case quietly. He's clever, and if he knows we're coming..." He stopped, looked past me. "Don't look," he whispered. "Just get up slowly," but I couldn't help it. I turned. Outside the diner window, parked across the street, was a rusted blue pickup. The same one from Maple River, the driver's seat empty. But the hood was still warm, steam rising into the morning air. That night I checked into a different motel under a fake name. I pushed a chair against the door, kept the tape recorder running beside the bed, just in case. I must have dozed off around 3 a.m. A sound woke me, soft, steady, knocking, 3 taps on the door. Then a voice, calm, familiar. "Hey, buddy," my blood froze. "You forgot something." I didn't answer. Didn't move. "You left your lighter in the dirt." Another tap. Then silence. I waited 30 minutes before I dared to look. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. Only a small object on the floor. A silver lighter, scratched, engraved with 2 letters, EW by sunrise, I'd decided. No more waiting. No more hiding. I was going to end this, with or without the police. I drove back to Maple River one last time. When I reached the edge of town, fog rolled over the road like smoke from an invisible fire. The white house stood silent, the porch sagging. I parked in the driveway and stepped out. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air was colder now. Dust on every surface, no sign of Minnie. I followed the hallway back to the basement door. The chain light still hung there, motionless. But the wall, the one I'd broken, was sealed again. Fresh concrete, still damp, on the floor, written in black marker, 4 words. "You shouldn't have looked. I took 1 photo, just 1. Then I turned to leave and heard something behind the wall, a sound, soft rhythmic knocking 3 times slow, like someone asking to be let out. My hand went cold. I stared at the wall, the fresh grey concrete already cracking at the edges. The knocking stopped. Then faintly, a whisper. "Buddy," I ran. Out of the house, down the road, into the dawn that smelled like smoke and rain. And behind me, somewhere in that little white house, a lighter flicked open. When evil disappears, the world doesn't breathe a sigh of relief. It just holds its breath, waiting for it to come back. After that morning in the basement, I left Maple River and swore I'd never return. But swearing means nothing when guilt lives in your bloodstream. I drove north until the fog thinned, until the highway signs stopped reminding me of him. And yet every time I closed my eyes, I heard that sound. 3 slow knocks on concrete. Weeks passed, then months. Life tried to move on. I published small stories again, factory strikes, highway accidents, forgotten towns. But the big one, the story about him, stayed locked in my drawer. Rowe, my contact from Cleveland PD, kept working quietly. Every few days a message, patience. The feds are digging. I tried to believe that was enough. Until one night, almost a year later, my phone rang. "He's back," Rowe said. "What do you mean?" "A fire in Kentucky. Old barn outside Lexington. Same signature. Gasoline, teenagers, nothing left but ash." He exhaled through the line. We found tire tracks. Same pattern from Edwards's truck. We're moving now. You caught him? Not yet, but we will. I hung up and just sat there staring at the dark window. Outside, the city lights flickered like tiny, nervous fires. I thought about calling someone. A friend, anyone. Instead, I grabbed my notebook, my camera, and started the car. Some stories you don't choose. They choose you. The drive to Kentucky felt endless. The radio played static most of the way, and somewhere between the state line and the first rolling hills, I realized I was humming under my breath. The same tune Ed used to hum by the fire. I bit my tongue hard enough to taste blood. By the time I reached Lexington, dawn was bleeding across the sky. Smoke still curled above the black skeleton of the barn. 2 police cruisers, 1 fire truck, and a handful of officers surrounded the ruins. Rowe was there, pale, exhausted, cigarette trembling between his fingers. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "I had to see. You're not going to like what you see." He led me closer. The ground crunched under our boots and blackened, brittle. The smell of burnt wood mixed with something metallic. They'd found 2 bodies, teenagers. No IDs yet. "Same as before," Rowe said. "Bound, burned, ritualized." I stared at the ashes. "He's still doing it." Not for long. A few hours later, the FBI arrived. 2 agents in dark suits, faces unreadable. They'd been tracking Edwards for years, apparently. Everywhere he went, something burned. But he always vanished before they could close in. Rowe introduced me as the reporter who started the fire. They didn't smile. One of them, Agent Mills, opened a folder. "You were in contact with him?" "Oh, yes, he called me once." "Any recent contact?" "No," Mills nodded slowly. "If he calls again, you don't answer. You record it." "You understand, I did. At least I thought I did. That night I checked into another motel, different town, same smell of bleach and loneliness. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every detail, every word he'd ever said. You'll understand someday. At 2:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. "Unknown number." I answered before my fear could stop me. "You came back, buddy." My throat tightened. "Where are you, Ed?" A low chuckle. "You don't need to know that. You just need to listen." In the background I heard crackling, faint, rhythmic fire. "You think I ran away?" "I didn't. I just kept saving people who needed saving." "You're killing them." "You say killing. I say cleansing. The world's filthy, buddy. You and me, we both burn it down, just in different ways." "What do you want?" I asked. "I want you to finish the story." Then a long pause. You were always good at listening. Click. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, holding the phone like it was made of glass. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Somewhere far away, another fire was probably already burning. At dawn, I gave the recording to Rowe. He didn't say a word for a long time. Finally, he muttered, "He's taunting us." But he's getting sloppy. Pride always burns the killer. 2 weeks later, they found him. It happened in Ohio, near the same county where I'd first met him. He'd been living under a new name. Edward Wayne Sloan, running a repair shop. Smiling in church photos. Helping kids with broken cars and broken homes. When the FBI moved in, he didn't fight. He just looked up from his workbench and said, "Took you long enough." They found 3 more Polaroids in his toolbox. And a lighter. The same one he'd left at my motel door. I went to the courthouse the day of his arraignment. The room buzzed with whispers, reporters, police, locals. When they brought him in, the noise died instantly. He looked older, thinner, but those eyes, still calm, still smiling like he was watching a private joke unfold. He spotted me in the crowd and nodded slightly. Then he winked. The prosecutor read the charges: murder, arson, kidnapping. He pleaded guilty to some, no contest to others. When the judge asked if he wanted to make a statement, he stood. "I did what I had to do," he said softly. "You all think I'm evil, but I only did what the world asked me to. Someone has to clean the mess." Then he smiled wider. "And sometimes cleaning means fire." Minnie wasn't in the courtroom. No one knew where she'd gone. Afterward, outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the steps. I stayed back. Rowe came up beside me, eyes tired but satisfied. "We got him," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "We did, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of a fever dream, the kind that leaves you sweating even after you wake." "You should be proud," Rowe added. "Without you, he'd still be out there." I didn't answer, because pride felt like the wrong word. A week later, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, amid a manila envelope, a single Polaroid and a note. The photo showed Ed sitting on a bench in his cell, smiling at the camera. The note read, "Thanks for finishing the story, buddy." I tore it up, then burned it. But even as the ashes curled in my sink, I caught myself watching them, hypnotized by the orange glow. And I hated that part of me. Because for just a moment I understood him. Months passed. Edwards confessed to 5 murders. Maybe more. Nobody knows the true count. He was sentenced to life in prison, no parole. But the story didn't die there. It just went quiet. In the years that followed, people forgot. New crimes, new tragedies. Old monsters fade fast in America. Except one night I woke to another phone call. Static breathing, then a voice, not Ed's, a young man's. "You don't know me," he said. "My name's Ryan. My mom used to go to Ed's meetings." He helped her. He said, "You'd understand." My blood turned to ice. Understand what? That I'm next. The line clicked. Silence. I stared at the phone until dawn. When Edwards died in prison years later, I thought it was over. They said he had a heart attack, that his ashes would be buried in an unmarked grave. Fitting, I suppose, but 2 weeks after his death, Rowe called again. "We checked his locker," he said. "There's something you should see." Inside the evidence bag was another Polaroid, newer, taken after his arrest. It showed a man, me, standing outside a motel, looking over his shoulder. And on the back, in the same red marker, he was saved. That night I drove back to Maple River. The town was almost gone now. Shuttered shops, empty houses, grass swallowing the streets. Ed's old home stood half collapsed, windows shattered, the porch rotted away. I walked behind the house to where the fire pit used to be. Nothing left but weeds and a circle of stones blackened by time. I sat down, pulled out my recorder, and pressed play. Ed's voice filled the silence again, warped and fading. Sometimes they ask to be saved. Sometimes they don't. I turned the recorder off. Then, without thinking, I struck a match. Just to see the flame, it burned steady for a moment. Warm, harmless. Then the wind caught it and it flickered out. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Not because the story was over, but because I finally understood the fire. It wasn't about destruction. It was about memory, and some memories never go out. They say closure is a door you can choose to shut, but some doors don't close. They just hang open, whispering. For years after Edward's death, I tried to move on. I changed jobs, moved cities, stopped writing about people like him. But silence doesn't mean peace. That just means the noise moved inside you. Every so often, someone would send me a message, a podcast producer, a true crime channel, a stranger on Reddit. They'd ask, "You're the reporter, right? The one who found the tapes?" I'd delete the messages without replying. I didn't want to be the guy who caught a killer. I just wanted to forget I'd ever met him. But forgetting doesn't erase the past. It only blurs it, until something sharp cuts through again. That cut came in the form of a letter. It arrived on a cold November morning, no return address. The envelope smelled faintly of smoke. Inside was a single sheet of paper typed. "You don't know me, but I knew him. He used to come to my father's gas station in Wisconsin. Said he was writing a book about saving people. He left a box here once. My father kept it all these years. Maybe it's yours now. No signature. Just an address. Eagle River, Wisconsin." I told myself not to go, so I told myself to burn the letter. But curiosity is a fire of its own, quiet, patient, hungry. 2 days later, I was on the road again. Wisconsin in late autumn feels like a photograph left too long in the sun. All color drained, only ghosts of gold and gray. The roads were empty, the forests skeletal. Every mile felt like driving back into a dream I'd tried to wake from years ago. The gas station was still there. Old sign faded, pumps rusting, snow gathering in the cracks. A man in his 60s stepped out as I parked. His eyes were cautious but kind. "You the reporter?" "I guess I am." He led me inside. The place smelled of oil and dust, the scent of decades. Behind the counter, he pulled out a cardboard box sealed with yellowed tape. "He left it here in '94, the man said. Said he'd come back for it. Never did." He pushed it toward me. "You sure you want it?" I nodded, even though every part of me said no. I took the box to a small motel on the edge of town. The wind outside howled like an animal looking for warmth. Inside, I sat on the bed and stared at it for a long time. When I finally opened it, the smell hit first. Smoke, metal, and something faintly sweet. Inside were more Polaroids, hundreds of them, different towns, different faces, different fires, and on the back of each photo the same 2 words: they learned. At the bottom of the box, another tape. This one labeled Final Lesson. I hesitated for nearly an hour before pressing play, static first. Then his voice, older, raspier, but unmistakable. "If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. But don't think of it as death. Think of it as graduation." I felt my stomach twist. "You were the only one who ever listened, buddy. You watched the fire and you didn't look away. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you ready." He laughed softly. "You think you stopped me, but you didn't. The fire doesn't stop. It moves. It spreads." The tape clicked off. I sat there, frozen, the silence pressing in like smoke. I didn't sleep that night. Outside, snow began to fall, quiet and endless. Each flake caught in the headlights looked like ash. By morning, I'd made my decision. I called Ro, the only person left who still answered. "You won't believe this," I said. "Try me." I found another box. More photos. Another tape. A pause. "Send them," he said. "Then stop. For good. Promise me," I promised. But promises burn too. Before I mailed the box, I went through the photos one by one. Most were the same kind of snapshots I'd seen before. Smiling kids, campfires, long stretches of dark woods. But one photo made me stop cold. It was taken in Ohio near Maple River. The same fire pit, same white house. But in the background, standing near the edge of the frame, was me holding my notebook, looking directly at the camera, and on the back in red marker, "He learned." I dropped it. The photo fluttered to the floor like something alive. That night I dreamed of him again. We were sitting by the fire, the same way it always started. He was smiling calm, poking the flames with a stick. "You keep coming back," he said. "Why?" "To make sure it's over." "It's never over, buddy." "Not with fire. Fire doesn't die, it just waits." He leaned closer. "Tell me, when you close your eyes at night, what do you see?" I woke up gasping, my skin cold, my throat dry. The room smelled faintly of smoke. The next day I mailed the box to Ro. Then I packed my car and left Wisconsin behind. Or tried to. Halfway down the highway I stopped at a diner. The waitress poured me coffee, asked where I was headed. I told her nowhere. She laughed. "Ain't that where we all end up?" When I looked up, there was a small television behind the counter playing local news. The headline crawled across the screen. "Abandoned cabin burns down near Eagle River. No injuries reported. Cause unknown." The waitress shook her head. "Crazy world. Everything burning lately." I didn't answer, just stared at the window, where snowflakes melted against the glass and leaving trails like smoke. Years passed again. The world moved on. I stopped writing entirely, but every year on the anniversary of his arrest I'd light one candle. Not out of tribute, out of warning. Sometimes, when the flame flickers just right, I swear I can see his reflection in it. That grin, that calm, and sometimes I catch myself smiling back. Last winter I got another letter, shorter this time. No address, just 4 words typed on clean white paper. "You kept the fire. I didn't tell anyone." Didn't even show Ro. I just sat there, staring at the words until they blurred. Because in some twisted way, he was right. The story never ended. It just changed hands. A few months later, I decided to visit Maple River one last time. For closure or maybe confession. The town was a skeleton now, only a few houses standing, the rest devoured by time. His old home was gone completely, replaced by an empty lot and weeds. But the fire pit still existed, buried under snow, but there, waiting. I brushed the snow aside until the black stones showed through. Then I sat down and lit one single match. The flame trembled, weak at first, then steady. It crackled softly, like breathing. "This is it," I whispered. "The last fire." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie, because the truth is, you can't kill fire. You can only feed it or walk away. The wind rose. The flame leaned toward me as if listening. For a second I thought I heard him again. That same calm voice carried on the cold air. "Good job, buddy." I closed my eyes. When I opened them, the match had gone out. Only smoke remained, curling upward, disappearing into grey sky. I took out my recorder one last time, pressed the red button, and spoke quietly. "This is my final entry. Edward Wayne Edwards is dead. But the fire he started still burns. In stories, in memories, in people who stare too long into the dark. If you ever meet someone who says they can save you, be careful which fire you walk into. I stopped the tape, placed it on the stones, and let the snow fall over it. Then I turned and walked away. Behind me, for a moment, I thought I saw the faintest glow, a spark maybe, or a trick of the light, but I didn't turn back to check. Some stories you finish by leaving them behind. That night, back in my car, I drove until the dawn turned the world pale again. I didn't look in the mirror. Didn't check the road behind me. Because in the reflection of the windshield sometimes, I think I still see him sitting beside me, quiet, smiling, hands folded like he's keeping something warm alive between them, and every time I see that flicker, I remind myself, fire doesn't die. It waits.